and welcome to the Techstrong AI podcast. I'm Amanda Razani, and with me today, I'm excited to have Fred Koopmans. He is the Chief Product Officer for Big Panda. How are you doing today?
Hi, Amanda. Good morning. I'm doing great.
Wonderful. Can you share, what is Big Panda? What services do you provide?
Big Panda is an AIOps company. And so kind of what that means is that we use data and AI to automate IT operations and service management. So kind of there's the people that build applications and infrastructure, and there's the people that operate and service those applications and infrastructure. So what does AIOps do? It helps identify incidents before they become incidents. It helps identify high-risk changes, suggest things like, this is the likely root cause. This is how you should fix it. Here's how to make sure it doesn't happen again and again and again. And so there's a whole army of people in large enterprises whose job and responsibility set that is. And AIOps says, hey, let's bring data and AI to automate as much of that as we possibly can.
Wonderful. Well, that's a good segue into our topic of the day then, which is how generative AI is impacting IT operations. So from your perspective, what are some of the key impacts that you're seeing with generative AI as it relates to IT operations?
There's a lot of things to kind of dive into there, but maybe we kind of step back for kind of a moment here. Generative AI is a disruptive wave. And, I think for myself, I've been in career in the industry maybe 22 years or so. I put it in the context of other waves I participated in. So kind of straight out of school, I worked on mobile, make the mobile internet work, make mobile data work. And from there was video and then data and now AI. And I think it's one of these things when you're at the beginning of a wave, you don't quite know it's a wave. You can kind of feel it, but you're sort of okay, what does it mean? Do I take my product portfolio and I add a little bit? Is this a sprinkling? Is this a rebuild? And I imagine there's a lot of engineering teams, product portfolio owners that are kind of questioning a lot of that. And it's tricky. It's not obvious what to go into. There's so much possibility. I bet you a lot of people have experienced this. What can be built in a hackathon in 3 days was the kind of thing the research department would have taken a year to do. And frankly, it'll be better. And certainly much higher velocity, you can get better feedback, et cetera. So it's just fascinating. It's a fun time to be working in tech. It's a fun time to be owning a product portfolio. A lot of responsibility that comes with that. How do you thoughtfully introduce this technology without completely disrupting your existing business and alienating your customers and all of that? So there's a lot to think through out there.
It is a lot to think through. And to that regard, what have you experienced as far as, is there any staff resistance and on the customer front, customer resistance when it comes to incorporating AI?
Yes. There's both resistance and, angst that we're not going fast enough. So you do your biannual survey, half the comments are why are we investing in AI? The other half is why are we investing more in AI? You get this sort of polarizing kind of view. And obviously that's just sort of one perspective. I think one of my favorite quotes, I was meeting with one of our customers, by the way, typically, banks, stock exchanges, airlines, healthcare providers, major online media, large enterprises, pretty much anything with online services that would be bad if they went down. That's kind of a good customer for Big Panda. So I was meeting with a large bank back in June, and I asked for the customer for his roadmap. Before I tell you my roadmap, what's your roadmap? And he starts walking through a bunch of different things, and you notice he didn't say anything about AI. And so I called him on it. It's hey, what's your AI strategy? And he looks at me and says, my AI strategy is to make sure that vendors don't double my price for no extra value. I was oh, Okay, so he's probably had like one too many AI roadmap, like this is going to be amazing. Everybody's thinking they're going to double their price kind of a thing. And well, like, look, I think he has since kind of warmed up to some of the things we're working on, our AI Ops Copilot, just as an example. But it just sort of, people have like their defense up a little bit on the customer side when they hear like another like AI is going to revolutionize everything. That their eyes start to roll a little bit. So yeah, there's all kinds of things there. Internally, it's not so much resistance per se. It's sort of like, well, how do you do it? Like, do you have a hackathon and you just sort of like spur 1,000 ideas and you have like random acts of AI all over your product that it's hard to rationalize and make sense and build an intentional product strategy out of? Like, that might be a good idea just to see what surfaces in a couple of days, but that's probably not the best idea as you bring things to market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that brings up another issue, that being having a good plan for why you're implementing AI, not just implementing it for implementation's sake. And it sounds like that was a concern of his too. Is there a real end goal if we're incorporating the AI, therefore they know if they've gotten a good return on investment?
Yes. And, maybe 3 years ago, you could have some cool tech, cool demo. People would just, here's my money. It's not 2021 anymore, right? In 2024, you need business value, case, ROI, demonstrable frameworks for that. For anything above like, I don't know, 50K or something like that, you need to have that. And it needs to translate something. So, to your point, it's not just about the technology. And, I've kind of been reflecting on this. Like, I'm not positive, but I think when I graduated university, came out with a engineering undergrad and master's degree, I was pretty sure it was like 70% about the technology. So like the balance of power, let's say, within a tech company, 70% technology and 30% like everything else. Sales, marketing, product management, G&A, like all that kind of stuff. And I think I've subtracted like a couple percentage points from that every year of my career. Like, I think it's like maybe 30% about the technology. Oh, Gen AI is a huge sort of leap forward in what's possible that unlocks a lot of things. But, good old fashioned product management, persona identification, business value assessments. Like, I got this cool tech that is going to reduce your operational load, saving you certain amount of CapEx and OpEx. Like, you got to translate it into their language because your buyer, like, okay, and by the way, my whole career has been in enterprise. So things could be wildly different in consumer spaces or in a space where like your buyer is an engineering team that buys the technology directly, but that's different. But for me, I've always sold to, large enterprises, the IT side or something like that. Is a little bit different there. You got to translate it into business value that they can kind of take to their CFO and sort of say, we buy this software and here's the ROI we get and here's the payback, and it's got to be in business terms. Like Gen AI, it's like, the geeks get excited about that part. The economic buyer that writes the check wants to see the ROI. You got to model it out for them.
Yeah, every step in the process is very important, and it comes down to good communication.
Yes. And well, that's internal as well. I think there's something, kind of go back to that thought of like, okay, when you have an established business of some form, whether you're at 50 million or, 500 million or beyond in revenue, you have some form of established business. And it's been a little while since you've done a 0 to 1 thing as a company. You're well past that. And now you come in with some new technology and like, well, how do you even get started on that? Is this just a couple of feature enhancements that you're going to sprinkle around your product? Maybe. And maybe that's fine. But it's also possible you're missing something if that's the only approach that you take. It's also possible that if you kind of start with a blank sheet of paper and reimagine, like, I was building this product space today or going after like broadly the same market, how would I build it and what would I do differently? And that's not only a technical thing, it's sort of like, who would I hire differently? What does my org chart need to look like? Where are the 0 to 1 people? Do I have 0 to 1 people in this organization? Are they working on this project? Because if like, it's very difficult for too many people in an organization to have to scale and maintain, an existing well-established business with customers that have certain needs on an ongoing basis and invent something entirely new. That's like the 1 to 2 kind of thing, going from one product to multiple products. So yeah, there's a lot to go in there. And I think being thoughtful and intentional about what it is you're doing, and then maybe also building some wins along the way, right? So the way the Big Panda started is we had a hackathon. We, spurred a bunch of ideas, and there were some really good ideas that came out of it. Not all of those got productized because they didn't necessarily fit directly into the portfolio. Although we're actually burning down that list, a year later now, we're fairly well along. At some point, we really gravitated on, a whole like kind of module, a new module of the product that is targeting a certain persona with a set of common pain points, and that's starting to sell, quite well at this point. It's really a bundle of features though. But that led us to our next thing, which is like, okay, let's rethink things like generative AI, with a interactive natural language user interface, probably running in Slack or Microsoft Teams with access to lots of data. That's exactly the kinds of things we do, but it's a different orientation. And so we've actually built a Copilot. Lots of people building Copilots out there, but I actually think that's okay. I think that a highly specialized Copilot that's specialized to a specific persona makes a lot of sense. Like if you think about it, our workforce is very specialized. And I don't just mean like legal and finance. I mean, within legal, you have privacy attorneys, and you have like a whole different variety of these things, and they can sniff out an imposter in a half a second, or some sort of generic kind of Copilot in a half a second. They need to say, hey, this is the data that needs to be trained on. This is the language that we use. These are our use cases. If you can build a highly specialized Copilot that's just right for kind of my set of use cases and needs, that's far more interesting than a generic, company-wide kind of Copilot. So we're doing that for ITOps. So first line responders, the incident management teams, those that kind of get in a war room when something is down, they have certain kinds of needs. That's pretty common from one enterprise to the next. And those are our users. And there's data lying about their organization already, both kind of real-time data, historical data. We pull all that in. We have the access to the right data. And you've kind of programmed like, hey, AI, I need you to think about and look and interpret this data the way my customer would, way my specific persona would. And I actually think that's really cool, that there'll be like lots of Copilots. I don't know how it's all going to work. I guess like there's going to be like my Copilot talks to your Copilot, and then they get together and they tell us what we need to go do next. Like that'll be cool, kind of collaboration amongst the Copilots when that comes out.
I think that'll be the next issue of concern, is figuring out how to maintain and keep track of all these connected Copilots and programs.
Right. So again, it's not just about the tech. It's about, well, how do we govern this? How do we build trust around this? How do we control it? I want to harness the power, but it might be a regulated company. I need audit capabilities and stuff. So this is why enterprise companies exist. It's to come in and take some powerful new technology, but then make it suitable for the enterprise where they can scale it and control it and test it and roll it out and audit and, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that is 100% where the industry is going.
Yeah, definitely. Well, if there was one key takeaway you could leave our audience with today, what would that be?
Yeah, my thought is like, decide when it's okay to do some incremental thinking for a while. Like, let me just take one foot in front of the other, like one step forward on generative AI, and decide when and who, maybe it's just as important, to kind of pull off and sort of say, I want you guys to start with a blank sheet of paper and rethink how we would do this. If we were starting from scratch today, what would we build? And that's true both for builders, people on the kind of the vendor side. And I also think it's true inside of a company. If you're consuming AI, there's sort of like, I have a bunch of tools. What if they had a little bit more AI in them? That's cool. Same time, what's possible now that wasn't possible before? What's this world going to look like in 3 years or 5 years? And if you only do the incremental thinking, you're probably going to miss or like miss it by several years at least, that longer term thing.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on our show and sharing your insights with us today.
My pleasure, Amanda. It was delightful to meet with you, and thank you for inviting me.
All right. And thank you to our audience, and stay tuned because there's more.